Vanessa, let's come back to you and what you were talking about at the beginning about Lebanon and the issue with Israel. Let's get some more detail on this.
Yeah, well, I think this is a dangerous part of what is happening in Lebanon right now, which of course is directly related to what is happening in Gaza. Hezbollah is fighting the Israeli forces in the north of the occupied territories to detract or to not allow the full force of the Israeli military to be used against Gaza. And of course, for them, the diplomatic solution is an end of the Zionist war against Gaza or genocide in Gaza. Now, what's interesting is that this article in Politico came out pretty much at the same time or just after the Telegraph. US to Hezbollah, don't count on us to stop an Israeli attack. Well, that can be translated as we endorse an Israeli attack inside the territory of Lebanon. US officials claiming to prevent a bigger Middle East war are leading an unusual or giving, sorry, I can't read that, warning to Hezbollah, don't assume that Washington can stop Israel from attacking you. Again, this is all, in my opinion, to basically put pressure on Hezbollah to end the conflict with the Israeli forces in the northern occupied territories. But if we then look at what they say at the end, it's not clear exactly what options Israel is considering against Hezbollah, which is not only heavily armed, but also wields political influence in Lebanon. This is an important point to make because, of course, the UK and the US and I believe Canada has designated Hezbollah a terrorist organization, when, of course, they are part of the political system in Lebanon. Sorry, can I just go back to that for 1 second?
Okay, yes, sorry.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, there you go.
Joint Chiefs Chair General C.Q. Brown has also had a warning for Israel. If a broader conflict erupts between Israel and Hezbollah, it may be more difficult for the US to help defend Israel compared with the April 13th missile barrage from Iran. That's because Hezbollah is geographically closer than Iran, but it's actually bordering the occupied territories. And therefore, an attack requires a much shorter response time. And Hezbollah also has considerably more rockets and more sophisticated rockets than Hamas. And of course, we know that the IOF has so far failed to even dent the Hamas operations in Gaza. So then if we look at the fact that also various resistance factions in the region, including Iraqi leaders, vow to support Hezbollah if a war is waged against Lebanon. Iraqi Asayeb al-Haq leader Sheikh Qais Khazali threatened the US and stated that if they support Israel's attack on Lebanon, then all US interests in Iraq and the region will be a target. Similarly, a spokesman of the Iraqi resistance factions responsible for firing drones towards Israel announced that they are today operating from afar. If a war happens in Lebanon, they will go to Lebanon and use all available weapons at their disposal. And as I've mentioned before, Syria, that is currently supplying weapons to the resistance factions in the region, will, of course, then also be drawn directly into the conflict. Now, these were two reports, one from Declassified UK and one from Haaretz back in late October 2023, so only a few weeks after the October 7th. US military is secretly supplying weapons to Israel using the UK base on Cyprus. Just to give some context there, Cyprus gained its independence from Britain in 1960, but Britain retained control of what it calls its sovereign bases, 256 square kilometers. It's one of its largest military bases outside the UK. Cyprus also has an operational support unit which provides support to the British forces to protect UK strategic interests. So basically, let's come back to this. The US is moving arms in Israel from around Europe using Britain's airbase on Cyprus, but the Ministry of Defense refuses to tell Declassified what American aircraft are flying or what weapons are on board. And at the same time, Haaretz was also pointing out that Cyprus was being used as a launch pad for weapons and forces to be brought into not only Israel, but as it states, Lebanon has also seen the arrival of special flights from the US, British, Canadian, German, Spanish, Dutch, and Italian air forces, so a fair amount of NATO member states in there. Some of these landed at a Lebanese Army Special Forces base near Tripoli, which is in the north of Lebanon, in an apparent attempt to prepare a forward operating base in case a mass rescue of their citizens from Lebanon is required due to a full-blown war between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, bear in mind, this was back in early November. The choice of location also indicates an assessment that in such a war, Beirut's international airport will not be used. Does that seem a little bit prescient to you? So let's have a look at where this forward base is being established. It's in the north, in Tripoli. And we know from previous news reports and research by myself particularly, that British intelligence have been operating heavily in Tripoli and setting up units there, establishing infiltration into Lebanese security, intelligence, and military, but particularly in Tripoli. So is this a forward base on the basis that if a war kicks off between Israel and Hezbollah, then NATO gets involved? This, again, was from Al-Mayadeen, a long history of military cooperation between Cyprus and Israel. It's reported regionally that Mossad has very close relations with Cyprus intelligence. Why is this all kicking off now? Because Sayed Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, has actually warned Cyprus specifically that opening its airports and bases to the enemy, Israel, to get Lebanon means that it has become part of the war and essentially becomes a target for the resistance factions. Now, in May 2023 and May and June 2023, there were joint Israeli Cypriot military drills actually, staging an invasion of Lebanon. So Cyprus did allow its territory, not only the sovereign bases, which can be claimed to be British, but it did use its own territory external to those bases. In response to the warning, Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulides, I've just murdered that, said on X that Cyprus does not participate in conflicts and is part of the solution, not part of the problem. But at the same time, Israel was eyeing a port in Cyprus. Back in March, Israel Hayam disclosed Israel's plan to purchase a port in Cyprus under the pretext of establishing an alternative supply route in case the Islamic resistance in Lebanon targets the port of Haifa. So we are looking now at a potential of real escalation between NATO member states and the regional resistance, in my opinion.
Yes, okay, thank you. Now let's move on.